good.
Yeah, all good.
Hi, Tina. How are you?
I'm good. Nice to see everybody here.
Same here. Great. Then, so if all are set, then we can begin with our session. We can have all our participants enter our today's session. All are comfortable? Yes?
All set to
Yes.
go.
All set.
Great. Well, then, Neha, you can have all our participants enter our session today. Good afternoon and a very warm welcome to all present here today. We are all set to begin with another stimulating session on connecting the dots. To stay competitive, today's leaders are investing millions in digital tools, agile methodologies, and lean strategies. Too often, however, those efforts produced neither the breakthrough operational processes nor the blockbuster business models companies needed, at least not before their competitors introduce their own advances. HRAI welcomes you all to the session on connecting the dots on the topic driving innovation in the new age. To know more about HRAI and its participants to kindly give your feedback on our session today. I now take the privilege to introduce the panel members for the session today. Mr. Pancham Dogra. Mr. Pancham Dogra is the leader of talent management in Bennett Coleman and Company Limited, the holding company of Times of India Group. In his role, he provides thorough leadership in the areas of leadership hiring, campus hiring, talent management, succession management, and leadership development. Pancham also leads a business called Vardhan in the company, which provides cutting-edge functional manual therapy. Pancham has over 22 years of work experience in the business and human resource management. He has taught courses on digital marketing and strategy in B schools. He also regularly conducts programs on neuroscience in decision-making, storytelling with data, user experience designs, digital business models and strategy, and various models on leadership and making learning stick. Pancham is on the board of All Indian Heart Foundation and provides board members oversight to National Heart Institute in Delhi. You can also follow him on LinkedIn. The link for the same has been shared in the chat window. Our next panel member is Ms. Tina Matthew. Ms. Tina Matthew is an astute HR professional with 17 plus years in the HR fraternity, heading human resource for NSEIT, specializing in the IT, ITES, BFSI, and pharma sector with organizations like TCS and Mastec. A total reward specialist for India, UK, US Geo, and XLRI certified accessor who has established networked organization where employee experience and channelizing to making it as a career of choice. Tina has been recognized as the top 100 2021 TA Pi Young HR Leaders CEO Award in 2016 and 101 Most Fabulous HR Leader Awards. You can also follow her on LinkedIn. The link for the same has been shared in the chat window. Our next panel member, Mr. Sudipto Mandal. Mr. Sudipto is a strategic and transformational HR leader with over 2 decades of industry experience across different sectors, ranging from manufacturing, technology, IT, ITES, FMCG, BFSI, and retail in multinational companies and leading Indian conglomerates. He is an alumnus of TISS Mumbai and has worked with different organizations such as Asian Paints, Zeiss, Oracle, Spencer, Crystal, Everready, and Star Cement as CHRO, and a senior HR leader. Mr. Mandal is also certified coach and certified trainer on customer service management. He has recently been appointed as the honorary president of the Kolkata chapter of the NHRD and the largest body and forum for HR in India. You can also follow him on LinkedIn. The link for the same has been shared in the chat window. Now I'll introduce our panel cum moderator for our today's session, Ms. Konika Chadha. Ms. Konika is the head of professional search and regional market leader for Korn Ferry in India. Konika has been instrumental in establishing the leadership team in some of leading organizations in the country. She has over 22 years of accomplished experience in the field of talent acquisition across all levels in different sectors. She is recognized in India as a strong leader and has received multiple recognitions, including the Exception Women Leader from the Women's Economic Forum in 2018 and her Rising Award in 2019 for Women in HR. Ms. Konika, I now hand over the platform to you. Over to you.
Thank you so very much. And I think I'm very excited about this topic, as is everyone. And thanks for the lovely introduction. We could not have asked for a better panel coming from diverse backgrounds and experiences, which was there. And I think the way I would put it is that the normal for all of us has changed. Today, we are living in a new reality where the pandemic started, the disruption. But even in the post-pandemic era, it has been driving disruption, and a new reality, especially at work, has emerged. And I think all of us are privy to it. Nobody has been spared. Technology had been evolving steadily, and the millennial generation was already emerging as a very powerful influence in the workplace. But since the COVID-19 pandemic hit us, businesses have been forced to adapt, or very sadly speaking, they have faced disasters, and we've seen enough and more cases of them not even surviving this wave which is there. So in the short span of time, the pandemic today actually has released an innovation supernova, and its energy will radiate through the businesses for years and years to come, because we're absolutely living in a new way of working, which we are all forced to kind of look at in a very different way. So I think with this background and looking at the panel members, before we become very specific on each of them and asking them questions in this area, I think I'll just throw open this question on what each of the panel members really thinks innovation is. What does innovation mean for them? Tina, let's start with you. You know, there's no particular order. I think just women first. I'm taking that liberty. So,
Yes,
Tina,
yes.
over to you.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's really lovely to see such a large number out over here. And Konika, I think what an apt, beginning when we are saying that, at a time which is, we've just gone through the phase of the pandemic. Not necessarily we put a full stop after that, but yes, and that's something that calls in for a need to talk about how we look about. Do we only really look at our faces as problems and then provide solutions, or are we looking at souls who are able to find possibly new ways and dynamic ways of conceiving the business environment? So if each one of us is really able to bring out an improvement or a change rather than just a story to be told, well, that's what innovation is all about, and that's what a lot of organizations have done in the last 2 to 3 years. So definitely a matter to be discussed on and a lovely topic to begin. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Tina. Sudipto, you come with an experience across different sectors and multiple areas. What's your view on innovation?
Yeah, thanks, Konika. Lovely introduction to the topic, I must say, Konika, and which is so relevant, as Tina also mentioned. And I think, this, the whole topic innovation is something you are using it very loosely. I mean, everywhere people start using innovation, but what exactly does that mean? I actually went deep into that when I saw that it is very loosely being used in the industry. So I'd like to make it very crisp, if you allow me, that one is that I see that while there are different definitions available, but the one which I created myself as per my understanding is the improvement in terms of productivity, efficiency, and customer satisfaction as far as the organizations are concerned. So innovation is definitely, it is not invention that we are creating something very different, transformational. No, you are talking about we are being with whatever is there, but how are you trying to innovate on that, not completely transforming or changing it. And in that sense, when you are seeing innovation, so it's a need of the hour, because unless you innovate, we won't be able to sustain our leadership position in the market. Unless we innovate, we would not be able to understand the customer's need. So that's why I said it has to translate into finally either productivity, efficiency, or customer satisfaction, if not all three. Now, if I just go back, I think there is an American philosopher, an academician. He wrote, his name is Christensen. He wrote there are two types of innovation. One is the sustaining innovation, one is the disruptive innovation. So obviously, depending upon the organization and depending upon what you want to do, both can be used. I think this is a very, very interesting topic. So I'm quoting another academician that sustaining innovation is something where I see I have a product, let's say it's a smartphone, and I just innovate on that based on the customer need we only know. But disruptive innovation is something where probably nobody could think of before, right? So Apple is a right example that Apple was the first company who thought that touch screen or touch is going to be the future. But nobody knew from the customer's point of time at that point of time. So you come with disruptive innovation, and that's how you create the consumer practice and the need for that thereafter. So now it has become very common. But earlier, even customers didn't know that this is what they want. But that's how the innovation came up, right? And the last point which I'd like to say that, when you talk about innovation, it's primarily a question of two important things. One is the skill, another is the attitude or the mindset. So you may have the skill or may not have the skill, that's one thing. And but even if you have that skill to innovate, then you may not have the right mindset or attitude. So then your skill doesn't have any value, it doesn't come into the play, right? And in that context, like creativity is often understood as probably innovation at times, but which is not. Creativity is actually a skill, but when you translate that creativity into result, that's where the innovation takes place.
No, thank you so much. And I think very, very nicely, you really put those dots together so that when set a very good context for us for the conversation and questions. So while there's something going on, and I'm going to hold on to my thoughts there, and we're going to come back to you on this one. Pancham, over to you on your thoughts. You are leading a business, you're HR, you're in a field which is going through a lot of disruption in terms of, how the customer is expecting and also generally, keeping pace with the changes in the world. So what's your view?
Well, thank you, Konika. And in fact, interesting views from Tina and Sudipto. So, in fact, the way at least I saw innovation, and you're absolutely right, Sudipto and Tina, that there are multiple definitions floating around of innovations. But from our point of view, when we looked at innovation in our organization, we asked ourselves, what is it that makes us tick? Uh, and the answer was very simple. That first of all, there is a discipline. So innovation for us is a discipline. What it means basically is whenever we are faced with any problem, the first thing we ask is how can we solve it in a manner that it has not been solved earlier? That is one. The second thing we always talk about is when we look at, for example, you talked about disruption. So disruption for us actually is a simple question. How does Bennett Coleman and all our properties continue to stay relevant with the changing audiences? So that is a question we've asked ourselves. And now the answer is the discipline. What is that discipline? Discipline is to actually find either a completely new problem and solve it. So the problem is new, it has never been solved before. So we go ahead and we are the first ones to solve. Second is, there is a problem, it has been solved, but we actually solve it better. But that discipline ensures that we have measurable goals. So just by saying that I will innovate does not help. We'll have to actually go back and say, I am going to use a better idea, I am going to deliver a result, and I am going to monetize the result. Because unless you are able to get that idea, make it work, and get money out of it, you will not be called innovative, or that is not innovation, because that can be invention. And I can give you examples. So since Sudipto talked about Apple, of course there are many others. I'll just pick the same example. So while we talk about Steve Jobs as a great innovator, the fact is, why was he considered a great innovator? That is because what he did was, most of the work that Apple did, for example, in its product, was produced outside of Apple. For example, PARC, Palo Alto Research Center, produced majority of the components that Apple Mac machines used. Similarly, a lot of features of touch, a lot of features of movement and using hands to actually navigate was not Steve Jobs' idea. It was Palo Alto Research Center. And Steve Jobs was able to take those ideas, deliver a solid product which consumers resonated with, and actually made money out of it. And that is why Park is not considered the innovative research center. They are called invention center. But Apple is known as the innovative company. So that differentiation is what I was actually referring to. Thank you.
No, very, very, I think very nicely you've carried over in terms of, what Tina and Sudipto just mentioned. And I think very relevant in terms of how to look at innovation. Sudipto very nicely put that, sometimes it can actually be misconstrued on how we are looking at it and what is the perspective of it. And I'm going to actually pick up a cue from what you just mentioned. Now, let's say we keep in mind that, creativity facilitates or builds innovation. How do we prepare organizations to actually be creative? So, I mean, I'm trying to use this as an extension to, what you just mentioned, and especially given you also have experience across different kind of sectors, which is there.
Sure. Yeah, Konika, I think this is the billion-dollar question that, we all talk about things, but how are you actually, fostering innovation in our organization? If all of us are able to do so well, then every organization would have been innovative and we would have seen spurge of, new things coming up and moving towards excellence, right? I mean, again, when I use the word excellence, let me also give my definition of excellence. In an organizational context, I put in even excellence in the performance management system, where I say there's something which has not been done in the organizations before. And if someone can bring in that positive change, which was not done before, is actually contribution. But if that contribution is something which is going to sustain for at least 3 to 5 years, irrespective of that person being there or not, then that is excellence. And that's what I think what Pancham talked about, the discipline that comes into play, that when you talk about sustainability, then without the discipline, that sustainability of innovation would not come. I'm still not using another important word, I'll come to that. And so that's where it becomes a process over the time. And that's how innovation will actually happen in some organizations versus the others. Now, that word which I was going to come to is called the creating an environment. If you are creating an environment to foster innovation in organizations, then only it will work. Otherwise, just by saying it will never work. And it is not so easy to bring in that environment. It will again have a process in my view. First of all, I think it has to start with the change management at the top, that, we are going to be committed and this is innovation is our priority. It is not because other organizations are talking about innovation, I am going to do our innovation. So really understanding the concept of innovation and then bringing it in the top management's DNA is the first thing that should happen. Once that happens, then there has to be some visible, results that we can see in terms of the behavior of them. That is the long-term commitment or the sincerity that we see, from the top management or the management, that it is actually working and the organization is working towards innovations. Now, how would that happen? I mean, it doesn't happen when you are juggling between short term and long term. Of course, you need to take care of things at the short term, but if your whole priority is on the short term and the task, then you are not creating the right space, mind space amongst the employees or others to really look into innovation. So that needs to have a separate time and space altogether to actually foster the environment of innovation. So take the example of Google. Google Incubation Center is not just the one part, but the whole culture of Google, that's starting from the hiring of the people. They create a lot of space where people can, use their skill of creativity and create that environment as a whole, as a team, not as an individual, right? Like World Cup going on, in individual brilliance may take the team to a certain extent, but ultimately it is the whole team's effort. Similarly, the environment, the culture is the most important factor, to have that. And that's where, again, I would say that Pancham's point of, discipline and the process that comes into the play. Now, so the next two steps would be, one is the building talent for innovation, that, I just can't have that, okay, I'll be buying innovations through talent. No, that is not possible. As an organization, if you're committed, then you have to also build from the scratch, because mind it, the creativity or innovation as a skill also has a certain time space. For example, people who are generally young, they seem to be more innovative because their experiences are not really shadowed so far, and that's why they're able to think more innovative, right? And then the organization, one has to be open towards that. So that's one thing. How do you build, bring in young talent, young thought process, new thought processes? Customer is another important aspect, that if you don't go back to the customers and invest on them in terms of the thinking, then you would not know what they want. Then how would you innovate? And the last, I would say, the phase that is very important, which is just bringing the flexibility, because if you want to do the innovation, then you have to provide flexibility to the employees in terms of their working style, atmosphere, work-life flexibility. I mean, a complete set of flexibility from the psychological point of view, and then create a PMS, performance management system, in such a manner so that you are able to reward innovation in a particular manner. If you ultimately don't reward innovation, then it will send a very wrong message, and then obviously then the whole aspect of creating the environment and seriousness or the sincerity about it will not work.
Thank you. I think, Sudipta, you very, very beautifully, actually carved out the whole ecosystem. If I look at it right starting from the top level, which is basically weaving it in the DNA of the organization, really, in the thought process. How do we take long term instead of taking short term into account? And obviously, I think young people have lesser experiences, so probably their opinion is less colored. Let's put it like that, but not that, others can't. So I'll take it like that. But very well said. And I think in extension to that, while we spoke about culture and preparedness of organizations, Pancham, you also, gave a little bit of a glimpse in terms of your introduction. But, very keen, I'm sure, the audience here would also be very keen to understand how to, we decide on whether to sweat on the available assets, or we need to move to something completely very different, which means just relook at the whole plethora of assets which are available for us or to organizations, really.
So, Konika, interesting question actually. So it stems from the responses that Sudipto gave. And something that I said, and let me just give you, two examples, and then maybe I'll relate these examples to answer that specific part of the question. So, first is when I'm talking about 2004, 2005. around that time, one of our largest innovations that came out of Bennett Coleman was a product called Brand Capital. Today, we all know it as Brand Capital. If you can look it up in the site. So, what is Brand Capital and how it originated is the story I wanted to talk to you about. So, this is a year when retail was in boom, and you have a gentleman called Kishore Biyani who wants to make Walmart in India basically. Future Group was going to be the Walmart of India, and he wanted to be the Sam Walton of India without saying so, of course. Now he came to us and he said, "Look, I want to actually make Big Bazaar a huge brand," and we really bought into that vision because we thought the vision was great. He had one problem. He said, "I want to advertise extensively with you, but I have a problem because I'm committed to growth. I am actually strapped for cash." So we said, okay, so let's go back to the drawing board and let's say, what is it that we can do? So we said, what is our currency? So currency normally, so maybe we thought maybe he's expecting some kind of investment. So we said, okay, why don't you give us equity? So he was happy to do that. But we came back with a solution saying, we won't give you money. Normal equity transactions are about money. So I buy equity, I give you money. But we said we won't give you money, we will give you ad space. So that means what we did was we changed the definition of currency. So we did that by actually eliminating the need for currency, and we used a process called subtraction, which is now a very nicely embedded process in any systematic inventive thinking process. And we eliminate the need for money. We said we will actually give you our ad space as currency. And today, if you look at the largest shareholders of Future Group, one of the largest would be Bennett Coleman. Why? Because we took equity, we did that 4 times over, and we built the brand Big Bazaar what it was actually in the mid 2000s. And in the process, we created a new investment vehicle called Brand Capital. Now, how did we go about creating Brand Capital? Do we go out and hire from the market, from strategic ventures, venture capitalists, private equity, or investment bankers? No. What we did was we got an enterprising young person from within the team who was in finance team to take this over because we thought we could take a gamble. So we were also not sure whether this is going to scale up or not. It was an idea, and the person actually made the idea work. Then we went out, we started hiring from the market. Today, in fact, at its peak, Brand Capital was 109 people, and all these 109 people were people from private equity, venture capitalists, strategic ventures, and investment banking space. So, so this is the one example. The second example is all of us, when you actually look at any of these websites that require you to log in, we normally are expected to enter a CAPTCHA, right, which is alphanumeric term. And at times you would see the CAPTCHA appears as a scan, and we have to replicate that in text form. We don't know that, but every day around 200 million such transactions happen, which require CAPTCHA. And you know what we are doing by doing some of these CAPTCHAs? We are actually helping companies, projects like Project Gutenberg, which is digitizing all the books. We are helping them decipher some of the codes, which, for example, were written in the ancient books, which computer cannot read and human can. So in many ways, without knowing, by entering the CAPTCHAs, we are actually helping digitizing books. So I'm just sharing these two examples, and now I'll come to answers. The answer number one is our experience says if you want to actually become more innovative, the first thing is you look inside. What are our strengths? Can we actually commit some resources internally and start working on it, and then get additional help from outside if needed? So the internal piece is the Brand Capital example I gave you. The external piece is the example of this CAPTCHA that I'm sharing with you. The CAPTCHA, they are not able to do all this on their own, because if you do this is going to take 37,000 hours, which you cannot afford. So they have outsourced it to the public. They're crowdsourcing the solutions. That means they're extending the boundaries of the organization to outside. And that is the second piece. When you know that you're limited internally, then you go out, extend, and increase your boundaries. For example, there is another website called Foldit. If you look at it, Foldit. Now, what is that website? It's a gaming website. But what do you do in that? You fold different kinds of amino acids. Why do you do that? Because this website was created because of scarcity of funds. So this website was created by scientists who were doing research on DNA mapping, amino acid folding, and how to fight some diseases. Because we all know how diseases actually are fought. Our amino acids, which are the building blocks of our body, they are the ones who fold in different manners, and depending on the way they are folded, is the way they go ahead and actually fight the viruses. So they are trying to find a cure for HIV by allowing gamers to come in and actually fold amino acids in innovative ways and hope that one fine day they will actually have a cure for HIV. So
Amazing.
this is a website that got created because they did not have the fund to conduct such an extensive research. So they crowdsourced the ideas. That's so step one, we have seen it. We have used our own resources and then we have extended our network outside, and we have always found that that has worked for us. And in fact, when I also studied a lot of organizations in terms of how they innovate, there is a brilliant article by McKinsey also on the 8 essentials for innovation. They also talk about this, that first you look at your internal resources, then you extend outside. So that would be my suggestion in case first look at what you have instead of committing everything and completely changing everything.
No, I think very well put. And the examples you're giving are actually eye-opening. I really did not know, I hadn't heard of this. You know, how innovatively, you guys innovated in terms of how that revenue stream could be generated, but through an alternative means altogether. Gaming being used for a absolutely different purpose and how it originated. I think brilliant examples, Pancham, and I think very rightly said, makes a lot of sense that first you look internally what you can do best, because most of the time even our internal resources are not really utilized the way they should be before we start kind of going and looking outside. And how technology is becoming a very important element in everything we are doing. Talking about digitization, about capture. I know somebody the other day was caring about, do you know when you say I'm a robot, what does it do? Every time you hear all of this, you get very scared in terms of what's actually happening. Somebody is, going to hack into your account, or, what to do and what not to do. So, but I'm going to go to Tina now. Tina, you're in the helm of how finance and technology and funds and everything is really moving. Organization which is really looked up to in terms of how they've used technology in advance. I think my question to you is the role that technology today you think is really playing in the business area. Obviously how important that is, and how important do you think it is for the HR function today? That's one. And I'm going to just extend it on top of that one. That do you think, we talk a lot about technology being very important, and like, we heard Pancham and Sudipto. Do you think it's somewhere taking away the human aspect and or the emotional aspect from the whole HR function? So I think I've actually put three elements into it, but I don't think you're really apt in terms of giving us your opinion on views on this.
So that's a beautiful thought, Konika. In fact, something which is, prevalent, or a sentiment that has been there right since technology has entered the landscape of the industry. That is, whose job is going to be redundant next, and what would it be for us? And yes, specifically for this fraternity, the HR fraternity, does it really take away that people element? Um, in fact, that's the phrase that we need to actually reverse and look at from a point of view, and where we say that how is it that we look at the HR process by removing the robot from the process, because a large part of the roles are pretty automated, streamlined, repetitive. How can we remove that robot? And that is what needs to be taken care through your technology processes. In fact, the fraternity has to be relieved that you have somebody to remove the robot away from you, and you can really work on the value adding processes and how you can make meaningful conversations and add that along to business. And that's something which technology did. So if you had to look at it, with the business environment itself changing, uh, now with pandemic itself coming in, there are different roles that will come across. You will have a gig economy manager. You will have, a human bias officer. I mean, what do we mean by talking about when they're saying that, okay, let's look at equal pay, let's have diversity. This is the job or role of a human bias officer. So these are roles that have really come in and evolved in, because you have better artificial intelligence, you have better data driven systems and management systems that really give that. So that's how roles have evolved. This is just 2-3 years. In fact, if you look at it 5 years down the line, this is going to become even better. You would have someone called as a distraction prevention officer. For example, I mean, now you're looking at an environment where everything works on technology that is pretty ubiquitous and on the go. So one example that we have right now is the mobile, right? Mobiles and iPad is what everybody is working on. So you have phantom notifications coming in, right? Looking through is it for me, not for me. That sentiment is something which actually takes away almost on an average 2.5 hours of your time. So and every time you look away from it, it takes approximately around at least 11 minutes for you to get back to focus to work. So you're looking at an error rate which could possibly double or triple when it comes to work. And over a period of time, after another 2 years, you will really need professional coaches who would be able to drive some purpose into that space and help employees navigate. So these are certain purposeful actions or roles that HR will take on over a period of time. You will be looking at distraction coaches, you'll be looking at network analysts. So trying to understand what is the true network of the organization, who are my ambassadors, who are my spokespeople, who are the ones who can really act for the organization. So you would use your biometrics, you would use your geofencing data to actually determine and understand what is the network of this particular organization. So if anything, technology is only going to remove the robot out of your operations and the way you work, and it's going to give you more time to actually add value to business and bring that to it.
That's very nicely put, actually, Tina. And I think very, very relevant points and some very good statistics that you've really spoken about today, and how the face of HR also, and how to look at people, competencies, etc., also is changing today. Something very close to me. Talk about it in terms of what are the new titles that I have been hearing and working on in the last 2-3 years. I sometimes really need to go back and see, okay, is this tying in what you're trying to say in the title, or is it meaning something totally different altogether? Where is it really coming from? But very, very rightly said so. And, with that, I think, Sudipto, I'm going to come back to you. I think with change being constant and new ways of working coming into play, how do you think it is impacting the workforce and the competencies that we need in people today to be on board, as well as in the future? Very short question to that. How do we hire for innovation?
Yeah, I think hiring for innovation, I'll come to that, but maybe I think it's a very interesting discussion that Tina actually started. And I really like that concept, the two words particularly, when she said that, taking the robot out of it, right? I mean, at the same time, using geofencing or other technology she talked about, which is actually going to help HR, right? So like always, this technology is like your nuclear weapon, right? It's very powerful, but the question is, how are you using it, right? I see it is only for the facilitation, right? So now when there is a spurge of technology that is happening, And nowadays, babies, forget about children, they are adopting technology so fast and they are into this. So obviously there is no choice, but all of us have to adopt to technology, right? And so that's one big change that has come up, and which was still a kind of a concept, but pandemic actually taught us that this is the only way to survive. There is no other option, but this is a kind of necessary evil, if you can say, because there are a lot of other flip sides to that advantages also, right? So there is no other way. Now we have to understand that in different kind of organizations, particularly me coming from different organizations, when I have seen the organizations, maturity curve, starting from the startup to when they become a very robust, high-scaled organization, the employee demography also changes, right? So somewhere you'll find it's a multi-generational, highly skewed towards probably non-educated or old employee set. On the other hand, you might find that it's a very young talent force, and they are educated workforce, highly educated workforce. So how to manage all those things? So as an HR, our primary job is to be sensitive to people's feeling. So if we keep that at the center of our actions and the strategy and the policies, then I think you'll be able to adapt to any organizations and create environment, HR environment accordingly. So if I give the example that, let's say in the Star Cement, in the cement industry, the way it works is that mostly it is a people intensive, very, mostly in the plant, and you'll find very old workforce they are working. And how are they trained? Because at the shop floor, they are trained to do the same thing again and again. So when you are training them for decades that do same thing again and again, where is the scope for fostering innovation? And suddenly, during the phase of pandemic, you tell that now you have to work from home and use the technology. This is a dichotomy. So, and then you say your organization at the corporate level is planning for IoT, Internet of Things. Then say, how do you automate, plant processes? You are talking about technology 4 that is coming in, right? So these are the dichotomies. So I think that is where HR has to play a role, saying that our policies and strategies should be such that we should be able to give space even to this set of people, and we have to give enough opportunity to learn, to teach them the right technology, provide that opportunity, and also train them. And the onus is not necessarily only with employees, it is equally with the organization. And then slowly you have to build them to say that that's how you have to, at least if not directly contributing, create the environment for innovation, for technology. This is particularly in the change environment of pandemic. At the same time, then if organization is thinking that now this is the external and internal environment has become such that innovation is the key thing or the must thing, then you have to start hiring for people. And that's where I think, Konika, coming straight into your question, that in HR itself, we need to be fundamentally very strong to see what sort of selection process or recruitment process I adopt to even foster innovation. So, if I have to give two extreme examples of the spectrum in terms of the hiring processes, one way it is about that STAR technique. STAR technique talks about that predicting future behavior based on past experiences. That's the fundamentals of STAR technique. On the other hand, on the other side of the spectrum, it is the executive intelligence. Executive intelligence talks about that you may not have experience, but you have the right competency and thought process to address, to manage, and to provide solution for any uncertain situations. So that's where your AI ML will not come into the play, because AI concept is based on the prediction, pattern and prediction. But this is where I think that Tina's point, that take the robot out of it and then say that how we can hire the right people who can think out of the box, who should be able to think through and then provide solution for uncertain, eventualities. So that's why it is. And then when you bring in those people, please remember in the change situation, they are also going through a lot of stress, whether the older generation, because they are not able to adapt to the technology properly, or the new generations, they have a different kind of social stresses, which also often get reflected in the workplace. So how HR will bring in their new skill, just to add on to the Tina talks about those specific competencies, that coaching, counseling, how to do that to provide right comforting environment for the employees to manage this. That also plays a big way in terms of ensuring that you are fostering the right kind of a culture for innovation. Not only you are living it just by hiring.
Very, 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 very well said, Sudipto. And I think much to actually look at from what all you've just mentioned. And in fact, that brings me to another question, which I think I'm at least very curious on. And you just kind of concluded your conversation on that, which was, and Pancham, I'll probably just pick you on this one. How easy or difficult is it to make multi-generation workforce on board in driving innovation? You give such examples, you just used any particular example do you think you can share, Tina? Anybody? I'll open that up.
So, in fact, first I wanted to add to what Sudipto talked about, your specific question. How do you hire for innovation? Actually, Ganika, I think Korn Ferry has been doing a lot of research on the subject of hiring, which includes, using management science, neurosciences, behavioral sciences to predict performance in a new environment, new job. Plus the entire competency dictionary, leadership architect, interview architect, the entire solutions that you have. But one thing that I'm sure you will agree, that you cannot actually hire for innovation by saying innovation is a competency, I will assess it.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
what do? You have proxies. So and the reason I wanted to share that is because that's what we do. So what we have done is we have actually done a lot of research, and interestingly, we also figured out whether there is a causal, So see, one is a correlation that is very easy to prove, because most of the times we say, if I have this competency, this will lead to performance. But when we say it wrongly, because while there is a strong correlation that a lot of studies have talked about between competencies and performance, but not a single study in the world as of today can talk about causality, that this competency caused that result. There is not a single such study. And McKinsey and Egon Zehnder tried to do this in 2011. They came back by saying, we can't find anything. So what do? So you find proxies. So what are these proxies? One of the proxies is conscientiousness. So if you use Big Five, for example, and if you find that the trait of conscientiousness is high, you will find that the person is more disciplined. And innovation, if it is a discipline, you need a person with high conscientiousness. That is one. The second thing is open to learning. You call it learning agility. I mean, there are multiple names given, but learning agility. But what is learning agility? Learning agility for us is actually two things. Are you curious to learn? Number one. Number two, can you think divergently? That means if I give you one problem, can you give me at least 3 or 4 different kinds of solutions to that? And can you then converge? That means, can you choose one of those outputs which you believe is the right, and can you defend that logic? That is the kind of questions we ask, because these are the questions we have seen resulting in right kind of people who we believe will solve the problems for us. Because what is problem solving ultimately? Ask a question, generate as many solutions as you can, then choose the most optimum solution. Innovation is no different. Innovation is only finding an answer to a problem that may not have been solved, or a problem that can be solved better. So we have actually gone back to the first principles, and these are the proxies we use. Now, coming back to the second question, multi-generation, actually it's not difficult. We have not seen any difficulty. And I can give you example. Like COVID, of course, COVID was existential crisis for every organization. So you had no choice but to adopt technology. But in our company, actually, what editorial teams, especially, in newsroom automation has been one huge opportunity for every media organization.
Right.
In fact, companies like Hindustan Times, they've invested more than 300 crores in getting a digital integrated newsroom. But it did not fly. They had to actually scrap the entire piece. Why? Because people were not willing to follow the workflow. So what do? We make it simpler for people. So what we have done therefore is, instead of getting the entire stack of technologies and processes, we have given them adequate tools. So I'll give you a couple of examples. So we have given people access to Quillbot. What is Quillbot? It is actually a AI based creative writing tool. What it helps you is, you type something, it will help you improve it. It will give you three, four options. So you can choose whichever you think will fit in your story. Maybe you are not
Wow.
able to think of it, but at least AI is helping you do that. So I have the freedom to narrate the story the way I want. Yet technology is enabling me to do that. Now, people who, I think we at times we talk about technology and we say that older generations are not tech savvy. That I think is a myth. I mean, technology in some form or the other we always use. When you drive a car, you're using a technology, right? Just because
Right.
I cannot use smartphone as well does not mean I'm technologically challenged. So I think our mental view of technology is also very myopic in many ways, and very tunnel visioned. If I can drive a car which actually requires 34, 35 different kinds of different levers for me to maneuver to drive home safely and drive office safely, I can easily manage a smartphone. All I need to do is learn it and remove the mental block. The same thing, I can use Zoom, I can use Teams, I can actually do that. It's no mental block. And I think that is the learning that you have to actually, as when we talk about innovation, when we talk about any of these things, we tell people everybody can learn. And we give them this by giving them very small exercises, like for divergent thinking. We just put a brick and we ask them, tell us at least 9 different uses of this brick. And people are surprised at the kind of uses that actually people come up with. And we say, look, you can think divergently. So what's the big deal? Then you substitute the brick example with a business problem, and suddenly you see a plethora of ideas. In fact, I must tell you, each of the innovations that you see in newspapers, for example, the jacket fold, the dewdrop based shaped cutting, then you have flaps, multiple flaps, jackets, and all. They are all configured internally by our teams on
Yeah.
machines that were actually procured 2 decades back when these
Wow.
things were not even known. Our internal teams have configured it. How have they done it? Because they just were told that you have to find a solution, and they went back and they found it. They never felt, and mind you, average age in the team that I'm talking about is around 42.
Wow.
I'm not even talking about
Excellent.
youngsters here.
Excellent. And I think that answers it all, yeah, Pancham. That absolutely answers this. And I know, I think all of us, especially the area you're in, we're all feeling it, right? In terms of how things are changing, because you can't stay away from it. It's touching everybody's
Of
life. And
course.
In
yeah,
fact, Konika, this must be something which everybody is experienced. I mean, look at all your strategy teams, the ones
correct.
reporting to the CEO. Yeah, what must be the
Absolutely.
average age there?
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And in fact, in interest of time, given we have very less time left, I think one last question to you, Tina. I think while we've heard competencies, got some great examples. I think it'll be good to understand what's your perspective on ensuring that there is this continuous culture of innovation in an organization. So, your two thoughts on that one.
I have only one word for this, okay? And I always believe that innovation is a product of a community culture, which is what we are seeing very prevalent in today's industry. I mean, everybody is wired with each other. There is a community. You have, so many communities that are built in, and we ourselves are a community right here, right?
Right.
So, communities are the way to really bring that up. And I'm sure each one of you will have at least 4 to 5 examples of how you have different communities, centers of excellence. You will have hackathons, you will have agile champions, you will have name it, and there will be a dime a dozen on this. And it is these communities that bring in that change. I mean, I
True.
just want to give an experience of how we've truly experienced this. NSAIT is known as a technology organization, and like you mentioned, in the banking, the capital markets,
Absolutely.
and we wanted to step out of that space. We said that let's go beyond this. We wanted to step into each and every person's life. When you have your sip of tea, And that's when our conversation started with the tea board. We said that, let's do something. I mean, you have the farmers out over there who are, auctioning tea leaves, etc. And you have so many middlemen over there who are taking a lot of advantage of the process. We build an e-auction process. I mean, that's where technology comes in. You want to build that in, and that's that community that is able to provide that solution across, which I'm sure is being done even in each of your organization. And it is only these communities that drive that excellence and that thought to, innovation. Though we keep quoting a lot of, single individuals, like, the names, I don't believe in individual names being called out. So as innovators who run the process, but I strongly believe that it is communities that will drive it and that will bring in this process of culture.
Thank you so very much. I think this can go on and on. This is a topic which I think no matter how much time we have is less. I think I'm going to just close this up and hand it over to you then, Peterson. One last question. Anybody can answer, or all of you can give your whatever, one line, one word. What role do you think HR is going to play in the future, especially when we are talking about innovation? Is HR going to be a disruptor, enabler? What's your view?
Yeah, I would not say that HR should be seen separately. Like in an organization, everybody can be an innovator. And Tina talked about community innovation. So I think HR is also a human being. So just leave it like that. Don't forcefully try to be a disruptor. And that's where sometimes it creates problem. But at the certain times, I mean, some of those, policies or environment created by HR policies that can foster innovator, and that's where I think HR should come into the play. Justin, I'm just taking half a minute, while we were speaking, and I think this example came in my mind when you were particularly talking about the multi-generational. So this one I heard when I was, studying my MBA by my professor, that in one of those manufacturing organizations, so the manufacturing process was such that in a packaged drinking food, drinking juice or whatever. So it was going through the conveyor belt, and there was one person who was constantly looking at it, that where the dispenser probably missed filling up the juice in that packet. And through a suggestion scheme, one workman, it's in Japan, came out and put one fan there. And when it was going to conveyor belt, that whenever it was not pulled, it was going, but that removes that one person's job there, and it saved so much of this thing. So this is what is interesting stories, and it really doesn't require, the specific discipline, skill, or creativity. Yeah.
So actually, see, HR, of course, is a business function, no doubt about it. Having said that, I think disruption normally happens when you have an existential crisis. So I think when traditional view of HR will have an existential crisis, chances are we will certainly look at more disruptive ways of managing our work. But I think increasingly, if you look at how the role of human resource function has evolved over a period of time, before 1948 it did not even exist in a country like ours. Then over a period of time, if you look at some of these developments, like and from the point of view of managing basically basic workflows to getting people in, to helping people retire, to now actually also helping organizations find their structures, spans, layers, optimizing budgets, and also looking at the kind of people who will actually fit the bill for future, and then actually predicting what could be the competencies required for future, and therefore trying to find catchment areas. We have in many ways we have also evolved. So in fact, for example, if you look at talent acquisition, it is nothing but a supply chain of human resources. So if you start looking at it like that, then in supply chain there have been so many disruptions. Why can't the same things can actually be applied in HR? I mean, you name it. I mean, I can go on, but in the interest of time,
we're already up. I think we've taken up a lot of time. Tina, your last send, and then we'll open up for any questions that the audience may actually have. I don't know how much time we have for that, Peterson, actually now.
No, I think we'll save that for the audience. So yes,
right.
We'll then hear from the audience on much needed.
Great. So before we take up any further questions, we'll capture the poll. So we'll request all our participants to share the feedback on our today's session. And while they're doing so, request all to share their questions on our today's session in the chat window. So Konika, we have a question from Nitya. Would you be taking it up with the...
Yes, I'm just going through it. So Nitya, thanks for asking the question. How do you get under the skin of your customers to really surface latent needs? Interesting. Pancham, Sudipto, Tina, who would like to take a dig at it?
No, I think that's the example that I already gave, Nitya, that Apple, and that's where the disruptive innovation comes into the play, right? And I slightly disagree with Pancham on that point, that only when there is a disruption it is. No, sometimes you have to understand the latent need, and then the disruption can also happen, and that's the disruptive innovation will also happen. The example of Apple is perfect from that point of view, that even customers never thought that this could be a need in future, because they are very used to it, a certain way of using the phone, but Apple went ahead. So that requires a lot of future thinking, and that's where the creating the customer's behavior, changing the customer behavior is another area of work. Very few organizations can do that, Nitya.
Sure, thanks. Hopefully, Nitya, that answers your question.
Konika, I have a very specific answer to the question.
Sure.
In fact, it's a very old tool. In fact, there is a very interesting book called Spin Selling. It's out of print now.
Of course.
But if you look at what she's asking how do I ask situation questions? How do I ask problem questions? How do I ask implication questions? And then how do I ask need payoff questions? So Nitya, there is a brilliant framework called Spin. You can just go through it, and chances are the answer to this very specific question you will have. That's the art of probing.
No, absolutely. I think we, in fact, just to add on, Nitya, I can probably share some links maybe later if you connect. We have a whole team. There's an organization that we've taken over, Miller Heiman. They do a lot of work in this.
Yeah.
That's a Korn Ferry company now. And trust me, as business people, even we are trained on all of this. There's this whole blue sheet and red sheet, and knowing where to probe and who are your stakeholders, understanding being provocative. Let me put it like that, being provocative. Okay, so we have one more question.
One of the best sales training organizations, I would say.
Actually, interestingly, Miller Heiman is not training, it's a process.
It's a process, absolutely.
So that's how they always call themselves. They say it's not training, it's a process. And see, I'll go back to how do you get results? By following a process. The rigor, without the rigor, you don't get results.
True. So one more question we have is, how do you ensure that multiple perspectives are heard in the innovation effort? Tina, you want to give a view? You give us some very good example of e-auction. So, it looks at very different perspectives, right? When you got innovation at the workplace.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what one is being heard, because I also hear you, Pooja, where you're saying that there are probabilities of ideas getting drowned, when there is so much noise. How can we have a platform that is neutral to everyone? And that's why organizations will actually have to explore and look at multiple types of platforms. So I'm not the types who would really like to talk in a discussion. So then maybe I would be happier putting it up on a box, or, in a platform that takes it up. Or for that matter, I find it very difficult to really write things. So they're in that situation. So organizations have to be very flexible, difficult, because you can't always, stereotype and box yourself to be outgoing as well as fantastically, efficient in terms of analyzing. You can't have all traits. So it's a lot to do with what the organization has to offer, and you need to identify the platform that most suits you. So does the platform where I can speak, or does the platform where I write, or does the platform where I go and meet the CEO and tell him my ideas directly? I mean, Mastech has this fantastic with this thing where the co-founders, they used to have a connect with the Gen Zs and the Gen X, all the generations so that those used to be times. So it's important, for you in, Pooja and all those that are there, you need to understand what is the style that suits you to communicate the idea that you have in your head. So yes,
So
that's
I can actually add one interesting thing that we have done. So what we say is don't give ideas. So we say if you have an idea, tell us how this will become a solution. So describe the idea, describe the problem it will solve, how will it solve, and what could be the potential pitfalls. And if we were to go ahead with this idea, what kind of ROI are you expecting? There could be some projection. See, any business plan works like that. We are not expecting a full-blown business plan, but we are expecting people to think. Because otherwise, what happens is people keep shooting ideas. But actually, there is no value in ideas. What value is in actually getting the ideas to get implemented. And that's what when you start pushing people to start thinking and even submitting your ideas in a specific template with some rigor as to why should we do it, and what could be the potential challenges, and then people start thinking, and more than half the ideas actually get dropped the moment you start evaluating your ideas. Now, there is another thought that we should not discard any ideas, but I'm sure all of us understand organizations have limited time, limited resources. We cannot really take all the ideas on board, and therefore we force people to think. And when people think, we have seen that works for us. All the innovations in production that I'm talking about are results of such rigor.
Great, thank you so much. So I think that's about it from us. If there's anything else, Peterson, I'll hand it over back to you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Konica, for taking us through the session and making it interactive and exciting. Today's session reminded me of a beautiful quote shared by Stephen Jeffs. Innovation is the unrelenting drive to break the status quo and develop a new where few have dared to go. Thank you, Ms. Tina, Mr. Pancham, and Mr. Sudipto for sharing your valuable thoughts and insights with us. It has been a privilege having you all with us today. To all those who wish to learn and grow, you can access the recordings of our today's session on YouTube link shared in the chat window. Before we conclude with our today's session, we would also want to thank all our association members, that is Geisha, NASSCOM, COE, Telgro, TLE, WICCI, LinkedIn, Local, Ahmedabad, and India for supporting HRAI events. To know more about these associations, request you to kindly visit the link provided in the chat window. Do join us for our next Connecting the Dots session on the topic Embracing the Inevitable Change on 8th December 2022. That's it from us today. See you soon. Stay safe, take care, and bye for now.
thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shyam. We can hereby conclude with our today's session.
Sure, beta.